And good afternoon, producer Susan. Are you feeling healthy this week? No more COVID?
A little bit better.
A little bit better? That's good. All right. You dealing with any snow out there?
No, it's actually pretty warm and mild this week.
Well, good. You sound like you're still a little bit stuffed up, but
Yeah, I have this annoying nagging cough that won't go away.
yeah. All right. Well, you want to hear what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
All right. Well, today's January 30th. It's the situation with Jersey Joe. It's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. Our quote of the week is from Mark Twain, who tells us what the two most important days of your life are. And I think I may have told you this, but I think it's a great
Mhm.
quote. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do actually.
All right. And in our stupidest thing I've heard all week segment, we actually have three nominees this week. So we have three to pick from. The first one will tell you which state has introduced a bill to give convicted prison felons thousands of dollars as they're released from prison. And the second one will tell you which city has declared social media to be an environmental toxin. And our third nominee is a suggestion for the dumbest protest suggestion of the year. And you can pick the winner. I'll just tell
All
you all
right.
three. All right. You've heard the expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Yep.
Well, we'll tell you how New Jersey's ban on single-use plastic bags that you used to get in the grocery from the grocery store has backfired. Again, the intention was that they were going to eliminate the amount of plastic going into landfills. Well, you tell
Mhm.
you why that has backfired, as Donald Trump would say, backfired bigly and accomplished the exact opposite of what those state legislators hoped it would accomplish. Um, We'll give you this is going to be opinion piece. Well, I'm going to give you an opinion on people who claim that they support free speech, but at the same time demand that hate speech be restricted and outlawed. Not outlawed. And I'm going to tell you why I believe that is an oxymoron. That yeah, I support free speech, but I think hate speech should be regulated. I'm going to tell you why I think that's an oxymoron. In a story I know you didn't hear in the news, we'll tell you why and where a Starbucks employee was fired for doing a good deed. You hear about a Starbucks employee getting fired last week for doing a good deed?
I don't think I did hear that one.
Well, we'll tell you why he did a good deed and got fired for doing it. Um, we'll tell you where some cities are requiring you to pay more than $1,000 to get a concealed weapons carry permit, and we'll compare that requirement to something that was known as a poll tax. Did you ever hear of a poll tax?
Yes, I have.
And what do you remember what a poll tax was?
It's like is that that's just a fee, isn't it?
A fee to have to vote. Okay, and why the Supreme Court ruled that unconstitutional over
Yeah.
50 years ago. So I'm going to compare that $1,000 fee. By the way, what does it cost to get a concealed weapons permit in Pennsylvania?
I think it's only $20.
$20. Well, if you lived in some of these cities, I'll tell you which state, and you might be able to, I don't want you to guess, but you can probably guess where it is. $1,000 to get a concealed weapons permit. And our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Houston, where we have a mystery man, a good guy with a gun, shoots and kills an armed thug who's attacking a man, and then disappears. So it's kind of like a Robin Hood did his good deed. Like who was it was probably before your time, but remember the Lone Ranger? Who was that masked man? Would do the good
Uh,
deed and disappeared.
yep.
Well, that's what we have in Houston. Good guy with a gun did a good deed and disappeared. All right. Our quote of the week by Mark Twain. And I'm going to elaborate on this after I tell you the quote. The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why, meaning the day you find out why you were born. What was your purpose? Now, uh, for many people, the finding out is the why was, yes, be, I became a great mother. I became a great father. I became a role model. I became a mentor. That was my role. Maybe you became a doctor, Doctors Without Borders. Some doctors come to the realization that, I was born to help save people's lives, and and they joined Doctors Without Borders. Um, the sad thing is that there are people who go through life never finding out the why, that they're the ones who go through life simply existing, frequently depending on government to support them while making no contribution to society or the welfare of anyone besides themselves. Um, so do you know people on both sides of that issue? Do you know people who have discovered why these are people who have a passion, and this
Hmm.
is, this is why I exist.
Absolutely.
And you also know people who have never discovered why they were, why
Yeah.
they exist. Yep,
Yeah, absolutely. Both sides.
both sides. And the ones, you'll see it on the TV, these people who live, it doesn't matter the city, Philadelphia, New York, what they live in something called the projects. You've seen those, what the
Hmm.
projects
Yep.
are?
Yep.
It's government housing. You live there, you live rent free, you eat rent, you eat, the government provides your heat, utilities, and you just exist.
Mhm.
And by the way, I think there's a related quote. I should have saved this for next week, but there's a related quote that some said, your life is God's gift to you.
Mhm.
What you do with your life is your gift to God.
Mhm.
And I kind of think that kind of goes hand in hand with the Mark Twain quote about the day you find out why you were born. It's what you
Mhm.
make of your life.
Yep.
Anyway, that's kind of my sentimental view. Anything you want to add to either one of those two quotes?
Yeah, no, it is true. And those people who are born into unfortunate circumstances, I mean, that doesn't mean those are the circumstances you have to live with.
Right. You take Dr. Ben Carson. He was born to a single mother. He and his brother lived in absolute poverty, and he
Mhm.
grew up to become a pediatric brain surgeon.
Mhm.
That was his why. Dr. Ben Carson. He ran for
Yeah.
president, but here's a guy. Literally, I don't want to say rags to riches, but he came from incredibly humble beginnings. A single mother working two jobs, became a pediatric brain surgeon and wound up, I forget what cabinet post he had, but he wound up being a secretary, I think Secretary of Housing or Health and Human Services under Trump. So this guy went from, you being a United States secretary, and a pediatric brain surgeon. That was his why. His why
Yeah.
was to save the lives of little children. Um, anyway, anything you want to add before that?
No, and it's not about, going to college and becoming a doctor or lawyer. It's just what are you doing with your life? You don't.
Right. Sometimes just being a great husband, great mother, just being a mentor to somebody. I know a guy, he's a great auto mechanic, and his goal in life is to teach young people how to be successful and how to become great auto mechanics themselves. And that's his goal in life. He lives to train and coach young people. There you go. Some football coaches, particularly at the high school level,
Mhm.
their goal is to mold and shape young men into becoming athletes and better human beings. So that's their why. That's their calling, if you will.
Mhm.
All right. So you want to move on to our three contenders for the stupidest thing I've heard all week?
Yeah, what are the three contenders?
All right. The first one comes to us from Colorado, where a member of the Colorado legislature has introduced a bill that, if passed, would award each convicted felon $3,000 in taxpayer money upon their release from prison. So that's your first one.
Okay.
Now, when I say the phrase environmental toxin, and public health hazard, what do you think of? What, asbestos? You think of lead paint,
Chemicals,
yeah,
yes.
PCBs,
Pollution, yeah.
PCBs.
Yeah.
Well, the New York City Department of Health and Hygiene um, has decided to classify social media as an environmental not just environmental toxin, an environmental toxin and a public health hazard,
Mm.
putting it in the same category as PCBs, lead paint. Oh, and
Yeah.
fentanyl, by the way, fentanyl. I forgot fentanyl and asbestos. So that's nominee number two. Nominee number three, it comes to us from the Facebook site Move On. There's also they have a website, moveon.org. They're a radical left wing, and they've been demanding Israel ceasefire, have just announced, unilaterally announced a ceasefire. And by the way, Israel has offered Hamas three different ceasefires in the past 3 weeks, and they said, release the hostages, and we'll give you 2 months ceasefire. Start releasing the hostages, then we'll give you a ceasefire. And Hamas keeps saying, no, we don't want one. So here's Move On's protest suggestion. It's join the global strike for ceasefire now. And here's how they suggest you participate. Number one, don't shop, use your bank, or spend any money. Number two, don't go to work or school. Number three, keep signing petitions, contacting your rep, showing up to actions. Um, uh, and if you're unable to do any of the actions listed, do what you need to do and refrain from the rest. So they don't want you to shop, bank, spend money, go to work, or go to school. Now,
Mhm.
I believe if you did all of those things as your form of protest, what I believe in about a month or so, you would all be unemployed,
Mhm.
homeless, cold, hungry, and unable to communicate with friends or family about the impact of your efforts on the war, since your cell phone service will have been cut off as well, right?
Mhm.
Because if you're not spending
Yeah.
money, you're not buying food, you're not paying your bills, you're not paying your rent, and if you're not going to work, you've been fired. So
Mhm.
you're unemployed, homeless, hungry, and cold, and
Mhm.
you can't communicate. So that was my so out of those three, which is the
Yeah, those are all, I got it. I think I got it. Uh, they're all great contenders,
so
but I think I got to go with the last one.
the last one.
You're
That's
not accomplishing anything except hurting yourself.
right. Oh, and oh, by the way, um, uh, and when asked how will the government, and let's assume you did that, and when asked how will the government Israel react to your protest, they will
They're not
respond
going to
with
care.
what protest?
Yeah, they're not going to care one bit. It's
What?
not accomplishing anything.
Yeah, they don't care if some whack jobs in the United States decide to stop paying their bills and going to work and go to school. They'll say what
That doesn't
protest?
have an impact on them
Right.
whatsoever.
But the other two were good contenders, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
Giving
yeah,
felons money and declaring social media to be an environmental toxin and a public health hazard.
yeah, yeah.
By the way, do you know what the subtext of declaring something to be a environmental toxin and public health hazard? You know why agencies do that?
So then get more media attention.
No, once you declare something to be a public health hazard, an environmental, you can regulate it, right?
Yeah.
You can
Yep.
regulate it. So
Yep.
that's their attempt, I think, to regulate it. Now,
And I think it's, by the way, going back to the prisoners, so I don't know about other prisons, but here in Pennsylvania, the prisoners all have a job. They all have to earn money for
right,
their commissary or whatever. And I think that needs to be a condition of their release, is they need to prove that they're contributing members of, can
right.
support themselves.
And they all get to go to a halfway house, because when you're released, you're
Mhm.
typically released on probation, and you
Yeah.
get to go to a halfway house. So it's not like you're going to be homeless and have to sleep on the street that night. Anyway, so those are my three. It was just, but I think you're right. I'd have to go with that ridiculous
Yeah.
protest
Because it's
because
not hurting anybody except
you're right.
yourself. Like, you're not proving a point to them.
In the country of Israel is not even going to notice that you've been doing all those
Yeah.
ridiculous things. All right. Well, let's move on to the road to hell is paved with good intentions, shall we?
Hmm.
All right. And I know you didn't hear about this on the news unless you live in New Jersey. A study came out last week uh, that looked at the state's 2-year-old ban on single-use plastic bags. Now, you don't have that in Pennsylvania yet, do you?
No, there's some individual stores like Wegmans and Aldi's, which are both grocery stores, that do it, but not, it's just an individual store level, not a state or a
Okay.
county level.
All right. And you know what those little plastic bags look like? They're really thin, lightweight.
Hmm.
I mean, they weigh
Yep.
about as much as a tissue, right? They're so
Yep.
thin.
Yep.
Okay. So here's a quote from the study. Following New Jersey's ban on single-use bags, the shift from plastic film to alternative bags has resulted in a nearly 3 times increase in plastic consumption for bags.
Hmm.
That was reported in a study this month. The ban took effect in May of 2022, forbidding larger retail, grocery, and food service stores from providing single-use bags to customers.
Hmm.
Instead, shoppers may purchase reusable bags made of woven and non-woven, and this is important, polypropylene plastic, which is far different than that little thin film.
Hmm.
Woven and non-woven polypropylene, or they can bring their previously purchased reusable bags to the store. It didn't take long, however, until shoppers started airing their grievances to local media that their reusable bags were stacking up in their homes due to having to repeatedly purchase reusable bags because they kept forgetting them, or due to home delivery services using the new reusable bags every time they drop something off, like if you order from DoorDash or something.
Yeah.
So instead of having the intended beneficial impact on the environment, the reusable bag ban actually backfired. The data reported in the study that plastic consumption in the state has nearly tripled with New Jerseyans previously consuming 53 million pounds of plastic before the ban, now annually, compared to 151 million pounds following the ban, the study reported. And here's the other thing. And what happened, by the way, each one of those quote reusable bags only lasts about 3 or 4 times. It weighs 15 times as much. One reusable bag weighs 15 times as much as one of those little plastic bags. And those little plastic bags actually got recycled. I know some people using to pick up dog poops.
I got one right here. I use it to pick up dog poop.
Right. And also, every time I would go in the grocery store, they would have this big barrel with a slot in the top where you would return your single-use plastic bag. And every time I went in the store, it was always stuffed. I mean, people would bring those bags back all the time and stuff them in. Did they have those in your grocery stores?
Yeah. So, yeah, you know what they make out of those? So at least the Wegmans here, before Wegmans stopped selling or using these bags, they had that bin, and the actual trash bins that those go in, as well as the park benches that are outside. It almost looks like that Trex decking.
Yes, they actually do make Trex decking.
That's actually what these bags are actually like, a form of like it's not Trex brand, but
they make a synthetic. You're absolutely correct. They make that
and containers and
plastic decking. So yes, so now my only question. So this legislation, which was meant to reduce the consumption of plastic and plastic going to landfills, has tripled. Now, do you think the legislature is going to say, yeah, we screwed up and repeal that law? What do you think the chances of that happening are?
Absolutely not.
Slim to none?
And whatever happened to, and I've noticed this a few stores in New Jersey I've gone into, that if you forget your bag, you can you can also buy a paper bag in some stores for 10 cents. Whatever happened to the good old fashioned paper bag? Why did we stop with the good old fashioned paper bags?
Well, actually,
that are compostable, by the way.
Compostable, yes. However, making paper, by the way, is much more environmentally, it takes a lot of energy. So making paper is actually a very high energy, and it creates a lot of pollution byproducts, converting wood pulp into paper. So those little thin plastic bags are the most environmentally friendly. They should have never outlawed paper, and they should have stayed with little plastic.
I mean, I just think of all the uses of these recycled bags that I've seen them turn into different containers and benches and things.
Yeah, no, they're great. So again, one of those things where the road to hell is paved in good intentions. And one of the things I'm going to be curious about, we've talked about Milton Friedman. One of his quotes was that the problem with government programs is that too many government programs are judged on their intentions rather than their results. And I think this is a classic case of intention rather than results. So I'm just wondering if the New Jersey legislature is going to have the integrity to say, yeah, we screwed up, let's put it back. So anyway, so you want to know how you get fired for doing a good deal, a good deed?
How do you get fired for doing a good deed?
Well, in St. Louis, a Starbucks employee, a guy named Michael Harris, he was 20 years old. He was working the drive-through last month when 2 men entered the store and began holding guns and began frisking customers inside the store. When the 2 men demanded cash from the person at the register, the person at the register tried to open it. And at that point, one of the robbers literally pistol whipped him, hit him in the head with a gun. And so Harris said, I thought I was going to die that day. This is from Michael Harris. I thought I was going to die that day. They walked in, announced it was a robbery. And then he said he felt emboldened to stand his ground when he realized that the gun was fake. So he said, wait a minute, this is fake gun, but they're still hitting. I mean, they're hitting people in the head. You can die from getting hit in the head with a gun.
Yeah.
So he started to fight back once he realized the gun was fake. Eventually, one of the men took off running, but he and another coworker were able to tackle and restrain the other one until the police arrived, the station reported. But weeks after the incident, Harris said he got a call saying he was fired. And why was he fired? This statement from Starbucks. The company said all employees are expected to follow our carefully crafted protocols to ensure the safety of our customers and partners during these situations. In situations like this, our training and protocols guide our partners to comply and keywords, to comply and de-escalate, not just for their own safety, but the safety of all in the store. Now, that's why they fired him. They said, because they have a policy to comply with robbers.
Mhm.
How do you feel about that policy?
You know, I worked in places where that is the policy, but for your own safety, just give them what you want. It's not worth your life. But I also see if this Michael Harris, if he felt he was capable to overtake the bad guy
And
and
they're
subdue
pisting,
him.
and even though the guns they were fake, they were metal. They're pisting people in the head. You're going to stand by, and if not you, you're going to. How about if they decide to whack another employee, open the other register? You know, you
Yep.
have. So, so if you want to discipline somebody, why not just say, hey, you broke the rules. You're going to take a week off without pay. Why do you have to go right to we're firing your ass?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, by the way, I would feel a moral obligation if I saw some woman so my coworker, maybe a female, getting pistol whipped because she's not opening the register. I would absolutely, and particularly if I knew it wasn't a real gun, I'm not going to stand there and let this thug pistol whip my coworker.
Yeah.
You know, could probably disfigure them. They could lose an eye. I'm not going to stand there and do that. So, you know, it's at that point, is screw your policy. You know, the health and safety of one of my coworkers is in danger, and I'm not going to stand by and let that happen, because if I think I can do something about it. So, and again, fine, if you have to make a show that, okay, we mean what we say, fine, suspend the guy for 2 weeks without pay. Why do you have to go fire him? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the cases need to be looked at individually.
Right. Well, anyway, so that was in St. Louis, and that's Starbucks, and that's why they fired the guy for tackling this guy who was pistol whipping employees in the head with a fake gun. Anyway.
Maybe Duncan will hire him.
All right. By the way, we've had a couple of stories with taxpayer relief shots and Taco Bell, where either the manager, by the way, Taco Bells tend to be independent franchises.
Yep.
So there it's up to the manager and the owner, the franchise operator. And I know in a couple of cases, you know, that Taco Bell, either managers or employees, have pulled out a gun and shot, shot armed thugs. All right. So, in a couple of towns in California. So let's go back. So last year, Supreme Court in the Bruin decision told those states that were simply refusing to issue concealed carry permits. I say last year, it was actually 2022, not 23, but in 2022, in June, the Supreme Court came out and said to New Jersey, New York, California, is unconstitutional for you to refuse to issue concealed carry permits. It's a violation of the Second Amendment. You must issue concealed carry permits. And we talked about all the things they do to make it tough. Well, anyway, so they keep passing all these laws in New Jersey. You know, they make it, you have to jump through 16 hoops, and anyway, to make it even tougher, we have cities in California right now, and I'm going to talk about San Jose and nearby Morgan Hill. In those two cities, Morgan Hill wants $993 licensing fee to issue a concealed carry permit, and 15 miles away in San Jose, they want $1,290 for your concealed carry, and it's only good for 2 years, by the way. So I want to put this in perspective. We talked about poll tax at the beginning of the show. Well, in 1966, and what the poll tax was, a lot of the southern states, in order to try what's the word I'm looking here, to discourage black people from voting, they instituted this poll tax. You got to pay a fee in order to vote. Well, in the 1966 case of Harper versus the Virginia Board of Elections, the Supreme Court ruled that the imposition of a fee, in this case the poll tax, in order to exercise your constitutional right to vote in elections, was unconstitutional, and they made poll taxes illegal. From my perspective, I don't see how charging somebody $1,000 to exercise their constitutional right to carry a concealed weapon is any different than a poll tax. Do you?
No, that seems absurd. Administrative fees for filing paperwork, whatever,
there's
but
paper,
that's
yeah.
it.
$50 processing fee, okay, because it takes some clerk a half an hour to to run a background check. Okay,
Yep.
that's reasonable. But $1,290 seems to be, arbitrary. What the legal term is arbitrary and capricious, and clearly made to
Mhm.
discourage or make it difficult. And by the way, talk about discriminatory law. What this says, hey, if you're wealthy and can afford to pay the fee, you can get a concealed carry permit in San Jose. But if you are lower income, no concealed weapons permit for you. So I mean, that's also, I think, discriminatory on that basis. So
And I think other states, like, we've talked about New Jersey and some of the hoops you have to go through to get your permit in New Jersey. I think that's also ridiculous. On the flip side, I think states like Pennsylvania, where I think I only paid $20 and no ability testing. I think that's a little bit too lax. I think there should be some sort of like firearm safety
yeah.
requirement. I mean, you need to demonstrate your ability to drive a car. So I think you should demonstrate your ability to fire a gun.
Well, except driving a car is not a constitutional right. But here's something. Now, remember, yes, you have to do a background check in Pennsylvania, but there's 26 states where you don't need a permit. That's called constitutional carry. And what that's 26 states have basically said, here are the requirements that you would have to pass in order to get a concealed carry permit. But basically, if you meet these requirements, you don't need to get a piece of paper from us saying that you met the requirements, because you either do or you don't. And the fact that we issued you a piece of paper doesn't change that. So in 26 states that have what's called constitutional carry, you in fact can carry a concealed weapon, providing you meet the requirements. In other words, you're not a felon, you're over 21, you're not you don't have a restraining order against you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, so they don't have any training, but the point is they're exercising their constitutional rights. So I think, yes, I think there should be a happy medium. I think you ought to be able to have a class and say, here's where, here's when you can legally shoot somebody, here's where you can't. But at the same time, it's not that because in these 26 states where people can carry a gun without a state issue permit, they've not had a rash of illegal or reckless shooting, so it doesn't seem to be that big a deal. I mean, I look at, for my taxpayer relief shots, I look every week for, I look at where people get shot, citizens shoot each other. I have yet to find anything where a legal concealed, I say legal concealed carry weapons, person legal carrying concealed weapon without a permit has illegally used that gun. So, is it really that big a deal? So far, the data says no. All right, how much time we got?
I got about 5 minutes.
All right, so our taxpayer relief shot, why do we call them taxpayer relief shot? Well, let me start with Santa Rosa County, Florida, where we have the sheriff down there. Let's see if we can find him.
If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And of course, we have a bunch of others, sheriffs from Florida, who feel the same way, but we don't have time. So I'm going to take you to Houston. And what's interesting about this one, the good guy with the gun does his good deed and then disappears. So here we go.
A man attacked while filling up gas, a gun pointed in his face, and robber demanding his wallet. That's what a nearby bystander saw at the Chevron gas station on Ella Boulevard. And despite just being a witness to the crime, Houston police say he decided to step in. Katira Winfrey joins us now at the gas station where all of this went down this morning. Terrifying moments for all those involved. Katira, break down what happened next.
Well, Marcelino, the scene is clear right now, but this morning, police had this entire area blocked off, trying to piece together everything. Now, we do know that robbery suspect is now dead. Now, this all happened around 12:30 this morning. Police say that a witness watched the robbery happen from his own car. Police say the robbery suspect actually pistol whipped the victim while he was pumping gas and took his wallet. Police say the robbery suspect ran away. The witness got out of his car and fired several shots, at least one of them hitting the man in the upper part of his body. The robbery suspect was rushed to the hospital and he later died. Now, the man who fired the shots left the scene and police are looking for him.
The guy that did the shooting is not here anymore. He left. So we're gonna try to locate him. And again, the individual that actually did the robbery has been shot.
And the victim did stay, and police say they have been cooperating. And also police say they have pretty good surveillance video, so they'll need to track down that witness, and it'll be up to the DA to decide if charges will be filed. Now reporting live in Houston, Katira Winfrey, KHOU 11 News.
So it's a taxpayer relief shot because the thug is dead and we're not the taxpayers. But at the same time, I think the guy who shot him, he's on really shaky grounds because if the thief was running away, he no longer presented a threat of death or serious bodily injury unless he was running at the guy with the gun.
Yeah.
You know, once the bad guy's running away, you really can't say, well, I was in fear for my life or I was in fear that he was somebody else's life. So I think the guy that shot him is probably on very shaky legal ground. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, and pumping things like pumping gas and using ATM, or those are things where your guard's kind of down and you are, susceptible. But yeah, running away, that's
again, unless the thug was running right at this guy, I think he was on shaky ground because at that point, you can only shoot if there's a fear of death or serious bodily injury to yourself or others.
and that goes for the police too. The police can't shoot anybody running away.
Police, right? So, and by the way, and if you look out and see somebody trying to steal your boat out of your driveway, you can't run outside and shoot them because property theft doesn't represent a threat of death or serious bodily injury.
If you're in the boat, you can defend
if
yourself.
you're in the boat, yes. All right.
But yeah, not if the boat's sitting in your driveway and you're not in it.
All right. Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Nope.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of you who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about the things I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found them as interesting and important as I did. And if so, hope you continue to listen to this podcast in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, you can find them on the Jerzee Joe Show website at jerzee-joe.com, with Jersey being spelled Jerzee. That's a Jersey with an R and a Z, Jerzee. If you want to email me with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, you can do that by sending me an email to simply joe@jerzee-joe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey Joe with a Z and a double E. And with that, producer Susan, unless you got something you want to add.
No, I'll get those links up tomorrow for everybody.
All right. Well, appreciate your help, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.